Better than last week, 12:02.
Yes.
Bro.
I'm learning.
The Irish Dragon, the Iron Lung, Feld Exotic, Paul Exotic. What's up, kid?
Oh my God, man. Here we are, another week into this, Jon Anik, and I'd say things are looking better, but they're not.
No. So here we are. It's day 21 for my family in terms of total isolation. I know you're creeping up on that number as well. You're goddamn right. The Irish Dragon is here, by the way. So it's April 2nd. UFC 249 is still on the books 16 days from now. I know you and I are both scheduled to work the show in some capacity. And I think that's occupying a lot of our mental space. Like if we worked for the NBA, you know, we would have a lot more, I think. So I think there is some good that we're thinking about this thing all the time. But, you know, your guess is as good as mine as to where this thing might go down in 16 days, you know.
Yeah, and then, you know, for it all to kind of just break apart recently with Khabib and in Russia and Tony and Conor's jumping in the mix saying he's in shape and Masvidal and Usman, Woodley. So, I mean, who I have no idea who's going to headline. Gaethje, obviously. Right. Yeah. Do we want to see? That's one of those fights, too. It's like, I'd love to see that fight. Do I want to see it on 2 weeks' notice? I don't know.
It's a tricky thing. Do you want to see it on 2 weeks' notice with very little promotional hype leading into it and no crowd and no announcers in the building potentially? We're going to go through all the names that Paul just mentioned. You know, for you, it's interesting because you're smack dab in the middle of this division, but because you competed fairly recently, this isn't even a consideration for you. But imagine if you're in training camp, you know, you could factor very prominently in this mix. And that brings me to Conor McGregor's statement. I just want to lead there, and then we'll get to Khabib and move on down the bus. Here's Conor. Today, I'm in shape to fight right now. At the beginning of all this, I said to myself, I'm happy I don't have an official fight booked, because if I did, I would have consumed all the incorrect data to support me taking part in the bout, and I would have followed through, competed, and won. And then he goes on to talk about Tony and Khabib. But I think it's very interesting because I do believe fighters who have a fight on the books maybe are trying to convince themselves of some of the safeties of this fight that maybe aren't there. You know, I think Conor put it in a very prophetic way. And you saw Khabib Nurmagomedov, this was not the right grounds on which to compete, you know? No. And I think for him, he'd gone to Russia and then UAE. And at that point, it just got to the point where, you know, the risk outweighed the reward.
Yeah, I mean, and like he said, put yourself in his shoes. You can't really blame that man. I mean, everybody is with their families right now, if you have one, or isolated. So to keep somebody just kind of dangling by a string, like, I think we're going to have it happen and risk not being able to get back and be around those people or do that stuff. I can't. I definitely don't think it's a cowardly thing. I don't think it's him really being scared of Tony. Come on now, man. Like, this is what, the fifth time this fight was supposed to take place. I don't think the man is scared of anybody in the division.
Right. And maybe it wasn't the right decision, you could argue, to leave the U.S., but according to the information he was getting at the time, you know, he was trying to go closer to where the fight was going to be and try to put himself in a position to compete optimally. So not surprised that, you know, Tony is calling for Khabib to be stripped, right? There's a rivalry there, but I don't think there's any criticism whatsoever to be levied at Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think he should be credited for, you know, stepping aside. You know, he's the one with that hard Ramadan deadline. Now he's not going to compete until the fall in all likelihood, you know. I think he deserves credit. And again, the real rub in this, Paul, and I'm getting a little bit long-winded here, but the rub for Khabib is not about the fight necessarily. It's about the inability to get home and be with children and loved ones after the fact. And I think for a lot of us, you and me included, you know, we're probably going to go wherever this fight is. No guarantees we're going to go home after the fact, you know?
Yeah, and that's the situation, right? Is we could end up having to get quarantined and all this kind of stuff. As long as I'm quarantined with you, Jon Anik, I think
let's do it. We could kill some clock. Yeah,
I think we'll find a way to kill some time and have some fun. But you know, this is a mess for everybody. This is new to everybody involved. So anybody that's like, oh, you should have done this or you should do that, it's like, shut up. You don't know how to handle this. We've never handled a pandemic of this magnitude or anything like this before. So we're all kind of just improving and figuring it out. But I'm willing to go.
Right. No, and I sit here willing and able, at least at this point, I
Yeah.
think what's interesting is when one of your kids like starts to not feel good, like my daughter spiked a fever like 99.3 a few days ago.
Lose your
But
mind, right?
right. Well, and it's like, so am I supposed to disclose that to the world? I feel pretty confident that the UFC is going to adhere to every protocol and precaution to make sure that everybody who's stepping into an
Yeah.
arena, a room, so to speak, with another individual will be tested and will have gone through all the necessary protocol. But it's crazy to think about getting potentially, 26 camps
The
to a
virus is
destination.
fabricated. The,
What'd they say?
the virus is fabricated.
Yeah.
People aren't dying.
Yeah.
Is what this person's saying, John.
Right. Yeah, no, it's scary shit, no doubt about it. And I think for people who are in an epicenter like New York, or if you're in Spain or in Italy, heaven forbid, you're scared shitless. Florida's not tracking particularly well. I know there have been some reports that maybe UFC 249 could end up down here.
Yeah.
I'd be real careful coming down here. I mean, certainly, I get excited thinking about the possibility of driving 4, 5, 6 hours to the venue. I can't pick you up in Philly, but I will pick you. I'll come
Yeah,
forward and pick your ass up.
That's kind of, I'll have to drive that one. That's a straight shot for me. It's a long shot, but it's a doable shot.
Yeah.
I just bring my rubber gloves, my Purell, a makeshift mask, and rip it.
So I went to college in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Gettysburg College.
Right.
It's close to the Maryland border, so it's a little
Right.
more south of Philly. But twice I drove to and from Gettysburg, PA to Florida for spring break and back, so it can be done.
It can be done.
There are recreational drugs, legal ones that can help you. Paul Exotic, dude, everybody's on this Paul Exotic thing, so I'm not going to bury the lead.
Grow back the mullet.
Have you watched Tiger King or no?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
if you don't want Tiger King spoilers, maybe this isn't the IG Live for you. I just finished it last night. A lot of disturbing shit in there, Paulie.
Dude, I finished it. We finished it too fast. I wish I would have taken my time with it and savored those episodes a little more, to be honest with you.
Right.
Because that's my shit. Like, that show is my shit. These Netflix documentaries about just the super outside the box, obscure people of this world.
Yeah.
That's why reality TV and documentaries, I think, are becoming so much more popular almost than fiction, because the shit that's real is stranger than fiction. I mean, it's crazy. This guy, that's a real guy. Joe Exotic's a human being in jail right now. That's a real Carol. These people are real.
Yeah. No, it is trippy and so toxic in so many ways. I've never seen
everybody's terrible.
Like, it took us a week to watch it because of the kids, but, like, I've never seen my wife freak out so much watching a show when my daughter walks into the room, like,
I don't know.
not wanting her to see anything,
You're not watching. No,
yeah,
definitely not Carol. Don't trust that woman.
Right.
God.
Yeah, exactly. Forget the blood, the superficial violence in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Don't take your children anywhere near Joe Exotic or Tiger King. But gosh, you'll
get wiped up. You'll end up getting wiped up. You're around Joe Exotic.
But
or
dude,
husband it up.
You posting that on Instagram with your face with the Joe Exotic mullet. I mean, there's a lot of legs there. I mean, anyone who's followed your career knows that you have competed with a mullet before, albeit not quite as long as Joe Exotic's.
Yeah, seriously, people out there that are just, within the last couple of years, maybe even the last 3 years, starting to follow my career, you gotta do some research, man. We have a lot of time on our hands right now, so do yourself a favor if you're a new fan. Please go and watch the first 5 fights I had in the UFC. I was fighting on balls and hard training. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't know what we were doing. We're all still figuring this shit out.
Right.
Thank God I had Cowboy Cerrone with me back then, who was just like, shit and get, man. Just get in there and fucking go for it. And the mullet says all that. You could tell I was still very much a part of that BMF training camp in New Mexico. You could just see it on me.
No doubt. Shout out to Daniel Gracie back in the day, of course. But yeah, it's amazing, the evolution. Thankfully, you still got the balls you can lean on, as we mentioned on FNA last week. You can still lean on those stones if you need to. And candidly, for me, mental toughness as an athlete was probably something that limited me. I think there was a ceiling on my mental toughness. I see it when I'm doing the high intensity training workouts. My wife just powers through, and I'm a fucking pussy about it. So I'm working on it, though. I got a lot of time to work on it now. All right, so
Yeah.
we talked about Conor McGregor a little bit. And again, the rub of his statement is that if he had a fight on the books, and I want people to hear this, if he had a fight on the books, he would have consumed all the incorrect data to support me taking part in the bout. And there are so many high-profile fighters, Paul, right now that do want to fight. Tony Ferguson seems to want to fight. He doesn't want to fight Justin Gaethje, whom he called 4-2 in the UFC, right? We mentioned Gaethje did start 1-2 in the UFC. He has since won 3 straight, all of them in spectacular fashion.
Yeah.
But you can understand, can you not, why Tony Ferguson, with respect to the fans who want to fight and want a high-level fight and a high-profile fight between contenders and champions, but if you're Tony Ferguson, he hasn't lost a fight since Cinco de Mayo in 2012.
Yeah.
He is beyond richly deserving of a shot at the undisputed title. So at this point, taking on a dangerous Justin Gaethje for an interim piece of hardware with a coronavirus backdrop, I just do not see the appeal for Tony Ferguson at all.
No, I when this all started going down, I'm like, there's a lot of people that are going to make this feel pressure. They're going to try to make him seem like he's dodging people if he doesn't take this fight. But if you really sit back and think about everything that's going on, and you're Tony Ferguson, now listen, I want this fight to happen. I want something to happen too. We all sitting at home, we all want this to happen. And if it can happen safely and under the right circumstances, like Khabib and Tony when it was scheduled to fight, if we could make this cursed fight happen, I'm with you. I'm following that. Now, if I lose that and I'm Tony, I go, oh, shit, like, what's going to get, I mean, not that Justin Gaethje doesn't get you out of bed in the morning. He does, but with a full training camp, you know, jumping in to face a guy like Gaethje, I mean, shit, anything can happen with him in there. You know what I mean? That's in a lot of ways a crazier fight to accept than a Khabib fight where you know he's going to come, he's going to try to wrestle you, whereas Gaethje, you're looking at a night in the hospital at the end of that fight instead.
No, it's all salient points there. The other thing Tony Ferguson mentioned, I believe he did an interview on SportsCenter with Ariel Helwani, but location. You don't know where the fight is, and it's 16 days from now. You're starting to talk about traveling potentially for some of these athletes as early as next week, even if you're not leaving the country. So I just think it's really biting off a whole lot to say blindly, yes, I will fight that zombie Justin Gaethje over somewhere in the world. You know, I mean, I feel pretty convicted that it's going to be the United States of America at this point in time. You know, you saw a report.
It has to be.
You saw a report that Jessica Andrade was told to come from Brazil to the U.S., you know, so that she could be within striking distance of a fight. The whole thing's fucking nuts. I mean, so you're...
Because now these people are here. Even if this fight doesn't happen, John, is Andrade able to go back to Brazil afterwards? If it does, let's say they cancel it, is it still okay to do that?
I think she can go to Brazil. I'm not 100% sure on that. There's certainly some places that you can't go.
You can always go to Brazil.
So, but there's certainly some places where they won't let you in. I mean, we're supposed to go to Perth in June for UFC 251, I believe, and it doesn't seem like we're going to be making our way to the land down under anytime soon. But the after the fact part of all of this for the fighters, I mean, think about a fighter. There's just so many layers to this, right? But think about a fighter who has a Felder style that more often than not results in hospitalization. You know, where are you going?
Man.
You know?
Yeah. That would be on my mind. And I know that's not how you're supposed to think. Oh, you should think, oh, I'm going to win and knock this person out. But let's be realistic. In this sport, when you're at the level of some of these athletes, even when you win, the way everybody's hitting, there's a good chance you're going to be in the ER. There's a good chance you might be there for a day or two and be okay, but precautions. And for a guy like me who knows he's at least taking a trip there, I don't want to go there.
No.
I'm not going. How am I going to be treated? Let's say I break my nose or orbital and they need to have all these scans and stuff. They're not sure if I can fly. So, you know, like let's take, for example, my hooker fight, right? I had fractures in my orbital. Nothing crazy. Nothing required surgery, but they weren't sure if I was going to be able to fly. So if I can't get in to get seen for that, and you're not going to over the coronavirus, I mean, those people are going to be seen before you.
Right.
That's where I'm curious. Are they going to have what's the insurance and all that going to be? It's crazy.
It is. I mean, my confidence is all in that executive level at the UFC, and Lawrence and Hunter and Dana and Pete Dropick
Bringing
and
in
everybody else to
doctors
figure
and
out
stuff.
whatever they need to do. I mean, there's so many smart, talented people there that have had obviously a lot of time to think about doing this. So I am sitting here pretty convicted 16 days out that somehow, some way a fight is going to happen. I just don't know where. And I think for you and me,
Kind
it's
of
really,
exciting, though. It's scary.
it gets your adrenaline going a little bit. Certainly, I think for a lot of us that are stuck at home, especially if you have young children, you know, my kids are pretty well behaved, but behaviorally, they're starting to turn. You know, I mean, this is really difficult. So I do think part of me is like, I got to get the fuck out of here, you know?
Yeah.
And people who are surprised hearing me swear clearly do not listen or watch the Anik and Florian podcast if you're hearing me cuss for the first time.
Or have ever met you in their lives.
Yeah. But so it's just now time is of the essence. I mean, are you sort of expecting, I mean, I guess you don't expect anything, but that you're going to get some information here in the next few days and start to try to plan some travel?
I'm either hounding you, Zach, I'm talking to everybody. I'm like, you hear anything that's going on? What do you know? Because I always feel like I'm kind of getting some information from the producers, but not really. You know what I mean? I feel like they know I'm a gossip queen. I like to know certain things. So I'm always asking Zach, like, what cities are we going to be in? He's like, I can't tell you that shit. So yeah, I don't know. I did hear the Florida thing, that there was a potential that the commission would allow it. So that's all I mean, early I heard maybe Abu Dhabi, but I might have heard that from the internet, to be honest with you. But so did Khabib, apparently.
Well, Khabib's father, I think, dropped it. And to your point, Khabib certainly mentioned that at one point he was told United Arab Emirates was the most likely destination. So we'll see what happens. You know, obviously we're all going to take the necessary precautions. And I guess I'm most curious to hear what the UFC's plans are for after the fight for all of us potentially. If maybe we're going to go to a destination and be there for a few weeks, try to hammer out some content. But as I've said, you know, I've done so much media this week. And Paul, I think a lot of us, you know, echo this sentiment. Given what the fighters are going through and given what the UFC brass is going through to try to put on a show, I sort of feel like it's my obligation as a UFC staff employee to try to figure out a way to get to where the show is. I hope I have enough. Some of these comments are crazy. What city has the best prostitutes? That is not part of my pre-fight research. But I feel like it's my obligation to figure out a way to get where this fight is, not to put my family in jeopardy, but to try to get to where this fight is and be of service.
Yeah. I need a task, man.
That's why this is enjoyable, and we're gonna be doing this every Thursday, noon Eastern time, as long as Felder doesn't jump off his roof and get injured.
Thought about it. If I could get up there, I thought about that, but I would have to climb up from the outside to get up there because it's just like a community of townhouses, unfortunately, John. But and I've even tried running more. The weather's not great here,
right?
And my back, I'm so heavy, my back is stiffening up. My Achilles is hurting. So I'm going to make this time. I'm going to run half marathon by the end of this. That was my goal recently. Yeah. I was like, that'll be my task. I did 5 miles the other day. My legs were shot for like 4 days. Then I tried to run 3 miles. My Achilles blew out on me. I just started running sprints. So I'm like trying to better myself, and my body's just like, nah, you should probably just go back inside and drink a beer.
Shut it down. How's the donut supply right now?
So I had to go. I had to go and
see how serious you get about the donuts. I love it.
I had to go and get supplies from the grocery store the other day. I had my gloves on, had my hood up. I was being, you know, as incognito in there as I could. And I went by the Entenmann's, not the mini chocolate covered, but the medium sized, rich frosted chocolate covered donuts. Put those bad boys in the freezer, and by nighttime,
she gone.
And I looked up the calories like an idiot. I'm looking at the
Don't
back.
do that.
John, for one of them, I think it was like 160 to 190 calories for one donut. I might have eaten 12.
I don't doubt it at all. I am out of donuts.
Look at the gains.
Well, that's the thing, dude. You know? It's like muscle. You're one of the few people who could probably afford to turn some of that muscle into fat. Shout out to the Sugar Show, by the way. Sean O'Malley joining us in the live chat room. One of the best bantamweights in the world. I love the bantamweight division right now because I believe on any given Saturday night, right? Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, Corey Sandhagen, Sugar Sean O'Malley, any one of those guys could be champion right fucking now. Like, that's honestly what I believe. So I'm very excited about 35.
Real quick about Sean, though. That kid, talk about a layoff and coming in and didn't miss a beat. And I think you were one of the people that said, I don't think he's going to have any kind of ring rust. And I was, I've been out for not even that long and felt like I had ring rust. So that kid just, yeah, I think that was a big testament to him. Anyway, continue.
And what a great ambassador for marijuana he is too. We like
he helped me out in Phoenix, John, when I had lung surgery. He came to the hospital and brought me some edible medicines.
Yeah, we like having the Sugar Show Sean O'Malley as the captain of Team Weed, so to speak. But yeah, 35 is very exciting right now. I have been chopping up a little bit on the side with Dominic Cruz, and don't have much to share in terms of his return. But I do think you're going to see Dominic as soon as this schedule continues. I think
he's training, man.
Yeah,
he's
no
training.
doubt. All right, so we mentioned Tony Ferguson. Again, I don't see a lot of upside in him competing on April 18th, given all of the circumstances, but we'll see what happens there. I think maybe more likely is Kamaru Usman fighting. He has gone all in trying to save this event. I'm not sure if it will be an undisputed title defense against Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. Would Usman compete in a catchweight situation? Could Ferguson fight Kamaru? People are trotting that out there. There are a lot of different possibilities now.
Because that's interesting, right? Because then Habib doesn't lose clout in his positioning for 155 pounds, which he deserves to keep that ranking, keep that spot, and his next fight, whether he wins or loses a welterweight fight, should be for the title, in my opinion. But if he steps up and does that, then he should be getting even more respect and have his chance to go and fight Khabib, especially if he takes on a challenger at 170 or even 75 pounds at this point, realistically. Because that might be what Tony weighs, if not less than that right now, though. Tony's not. He stays close to weight, so he'd have to start eating.
Another high-profile guy, Dustin Poirier, has injected his name into the mix. He has a fight with Dan Hooker that will, in all likelihood, happen unless Poirier is tabbed to fight on April 18th. But we'll see which 18, 20, 22, 24 athletes they can actually get for April 18th. But I don't know, man. It's just crazy to wrap my head around us doing anything that amounts to a full show 16 days from now, right? Yeah. I did voice some stuff for the UFC this morning. Not going to go too deep down that well for you right now, but we'll see what happens. But I don't know. I just think that the sports community and the MMA community is jonesing for some entertainment. And even if you and I are in a booth, in a separate booth or whatever it takes,
Yeah. Like I said, just something. I know it's dangerous out there, but if I had I'll set up a thing here and we'll stream and something to.
Well, that's the interesting thing for us commentators. I don't know that any of us really need to leave where we are.
Right. We could figure it out as long as we're connected to each other and are watching the same thing at the same time.
I mean, Joe Rogan has a state-of-the-art studio. You got to think at some point they've considered trying to get me and the broadcast team to LA to do potentially the show from there. Got all the bells and whistles, and you'd have Joe. I think the interesting thing will be the post-fight interviews. Are you going to send somebody in there? Bisping did do them in Brasilia. But would you actually send somebody in the octagon to interview fighters? Buffer's freaking out. He's not going to be up in your face screaming. No fist bumps from Bruce Buffer on the 18th.
Stay away. Stay away. Social distance your ass away from me while you're calling my name.
So last Thursday, as we were wrapping up the Instagram Live, I don't know if you got the Jon Jones news at the beginning of our IG Live chat and thought it was a joke or something, but it looked like people were trying to get us that information.
Yeah, now, that's what I got from it, that they were trying to tell us, Yeah,
so now that we've had a week to digest the Jon Jones news, I will just lead with this to a fellow girl dad. I think it becomes embarrassing as a father to have to go back to your daughters. They're not aging in reverse as they get older. And they are more acutely aware of alcohol and everything that's going on. I just think that's going to become an increasingly trickier dynamic for Jon Jones to have those conversations with his daughters. I did an event in Houston earlier last month now, I should say. His daughters were present. It was great seeing that dynamic, And then a few weeks later, he's got to go back to them. Hey, Daddy screwed up again. I'm hopeful that this time around maybe he's bottomed out and that will really affect change. But it's hard for me to be too ambitious or optimistic that Jones is going to return to being some pay-per-view juggernaut for the UFC, given this latest transgression.
Yeah, man. I just, I've met John a bajillion times. I've trained with him in New Mexico. And when you meet him and he's sober and he's calm and he's himself, he's one of the most intense, intriguing, and charismatic guys out there. But there's clearly some demons in there, and they seem to come out when he starts boozing. It's just clear, like, you do dumb shit when you're boozing, bro. You need to not be drinking. That's just, I think at this point in his career, when you've been arrested this many times and done some really, really dumb shit. We're not talking like you got a DUI on some back ass roads that nobody was driving on. You're popping off your gun with a bottle of tequila next to you, and you got daughters at home. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, right.
I mean, how many times you got to do that? It's like, it's not like you got drunk and got into a bar fight. You're smashing into pregnant women.
Yeah, man. No, I know. Cody Merrow chiming in the chat room, it's like eventually your daughters are going to be Googling your name. And for your daughter, Ashling, maybe the worst thing she sees is daddy with a whole bunch of makeup from his acting days, at least right now, It's like, hey, I mean, I am no saint, okay? Like, I can assure you that,
Me either.
I don't want to assure you, right? But there could come a time where either of you, Darren Till, get on in here. Love to see the gorilla Darren Till chiming in.
Well, why is there a question mark, Darren? Am I looking too husky right now, or what?
Yeah, maybe Paul and I will join Darren Till with the pictures with our guts sticking out at the end of this.
Well, he did. I think Till did the Joe Exotic face too. Somebody posted his face with the joke. He could fit it too.
Yeah.
That boy from Liverpool, he can rock a mullet and look a little trashy if he needs to. He knows it.
So my daughter's almost at the point where she'll probably Google me, and that 209 tattoo will probably come up, and I'll probably have to explain that at some point in time. I used to tell them when I only had two daughters that the 2 was for my daughters and the 9 was for something else when they would ask. But eventually we'll get to the real story. Yeah. So, it's frustrating for Jon Jones. I mean, the penalty doesn't appear to be too stiff this time around. A lot of people thought that maybe he would be looking at jail time. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Jon could get back on a competitive schedule. But I just hope, and I didn't want to spend too much time on this, I just hope, Paulie, in terms of the rehabilitation, that it's legitimate, this time around, that it is longer term and really something that's going to affect change, because I do believe that there's a good guy in there. I mean, remember that experience you and I had in that fighter meeting?
That's what I'm saying.
Tell everybody about that.
Well, when Jon came into the meetings, I guess a Thiago Santos fight?
Exactly right.
Right? Came into the fighter meetings, and usually the way it's set up, me, Jon, and the producers are on one side of the desk, or whoever's calling the fights with is DC, Dom, and on the other side is the fighters. Well, Jon came in, pulled up a chair, sat right in the middle. And he's also one of those guys that when he talks to you, he really talks to you. He listens to what you're saying. He answers your question. He said some really nice things to everybody. He's one of those guys you can tell when he's on his P's and Q's, and he's either going to church or whatever it is for Jon that I know he's a religious guy, even though he's messed up.
Yeah.
We all have, right? So it's like, I just know how cool of a dude he can be when he's on. So to see him have to go through this again, it just sucks. And I'm not bashing him. I know people screw up. So I also want to say that. I'm like you said, Jon, we're no saints. It just sucks to see a guy who's potentially the best to ever do this, have to slow himself down again.
A lot of people trot out that adjective fake when talking about Jon Jones. I can only judge him on my personal experiences, and he has largely been genuine. And for me, just to see him come over to that side of the table and start talking to you about your recent fights and your lightweight trajectory into contention, like, he's not doing that to kiss your ass so you say nice things about him on the broadcast. Like, he watches your career, he's a fan, and he wanted to make you feel good, period.
And he gave me a Gatorade one time when we were in New Mexico, and he didn't know who I was. So thanks for that Gatorade, Jon Jones.
So one thing that we talked about on the Anakin Florian podcast this week, and we've talked about it on other platforms, Ali Abdelaziz, who represents Khabib Nurmagomedov. He also represents Justin Gaethje, also represents Kamaru Usman. So not out of the realm of possibility that these guys like Usman and Gaethje could have had a whole lot of information into Khabib and finding out right away that he wasn't going to compete, So
yeah, that's true.
Sean Madden, one of Gaethje's teammates, said Gaethje has been in the gym. The word has been mum from Gaethje since it was reported that he was offered the fight. But not the ideal circumstances, though. I mean, Gaethje,
No.
even if he's in shape, fighting Ferguson again with this coronavirus cloud lurking, it just doesn't make a whole lot of competitive sense for me.
No, because even if you're able to train in a gym, let's say you can even get into a gym, even if you're by yourself, you got heavy bags, ground and pound, cardio machines, weights, whatever, but it's still not quite the same as sparring. But John Kavanaugh said something, I think it was on Twitter, that I thought was really interesting too. He's like, you take the sparring, you think people are going to not be prepared, not going to be ready. He's like, what I think you're going to have is two athletes with absolutely no injuries going to a fight, which there's an argument there, right? And that's kind of always been the problem with MMA, is either going too far. How do you pull back? How do you prepare for live combat, basically, without really going in there? And it's, guys like Tony don't really spar. I know there's quite a few people that don't really bash their heads in as much as
Sure.
we used to in the old days. So
Right.
yeah, you might end up having the craziest fight ever because you've got two people that aren't banged up.
We had Forrest Griffin on our show earlier this week, and he is very dismissive of any excuses for cardio and conditioning, right? He says you control, and weight cutting, he's like, you control what goes into your mouth.
Yeah.
You got to think a lot of these athletes, especially the high-profile ones like Kamaru Usman, who are throwing their name out there, you got to think they're in tremendous shape from a strength and conditioning standpoint, because if you can control that, lean on the cardio late, maybe everything else takes care of itself. But Kamaru's not the type of guy to put himself out there if he's not at least in shape to go 25 minutes potentially.
No, yeah, he would have to be doing something, whether it's hitting aerodyne sprints or running, and
Right.
maybe he's got a group of guys that he has been working, he has been working with that, have only been around a certain amount of people. But even that, to a degree, is getting to the point where that's just they don't. I've heard of stories in certain cities where if you're outside, even in a park messing around, they're sending you home.
Right.
Like you can't even.
Right.
It's getting to the point where even going for your walks, they're like, "Yeah, how long are you going to be out? Maybe you should go back home." So
Right.
it's shutting down parks. They're shutting down everything, man. So it's.
Yeah.
I can't imagine even going for a run is going to start getting one.
It is. No, it is. Everything's changing down here in Florida. I can tell you, because 3 days ago,
shut down.
3 days ago, I could run. All the playgrounds are closed, but I could run by soccer fields through a park. Now the park's completely roped off. You can't run. And then, so as a result, all the sidewalks are crowded, trying to distance when I'm running with my son and the stroller. And it's like, fuck, if anyone's going to get off the sidewalk to help me, so I'm going off-roading, trying to not, kill my toddler. Let me get to a couple tweets here for Paul Felder, at Felder Paul on social media. This one from Josh P _UFC picks. If you were to do anything different in the Dan Hooker bout, what would it be?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe.
Yes, that's a good question. And there's immediately things, because even in the corner, Duke wanted certain things from me, and he wanted me to worry less about trying to knock him out, more volume. You could see it. I was getting him on his heels quite easily, right? I was eating some shots early, which once I figured out the timing of the calf kick a little bit and his jab, I really did start having confidence in my own jab and my cross more than anything. I was really landing that straight right hand. So in looking back, in hindsight, I would have tried to jab more and move in and cut him off. I was letting him escape along the fence. I felt like I was cutting him off, but watching the fight over and over again, I wasn't taking wide enough steps. And if you watch the fight back, you can hear Duke saying, like, really beat him to it. He's going to your left every time. So I would have thrown more volume, and I probably would have thrown more leg kicks too.
Well, rest assured, I agree with all of these commenters that Paul Exotic won the fight. I hate the word robbery in MMA, but I will admit that after every time I watch it, it looks even cleaner as at least a 3-2 win for you. All right, this tweet from 307_Lewis. Would UFC 249 be Conor's chance to get equity in the UFC? I thought it was kind of an interesting question. It's like, hey, you want me to come save the show? Give me a piece of the company. All right, next up, any chance, and this one's from Last Kyle Bender. I kind of like that. Any chance of a super card with all the canceled main events on the same night when this is all over? I mean, Francis Ngannou, Tyron Woodley, Kamaru Usman, Tony Ferguson, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think there's a chance of a super card potentially.
Oh, I think when it comes back, we're going to have at least one blowout night where, Dana says, here you go, like, welcome back. Here's just the first prelim of the night is going to be one of those cards. We had one not too long ago where I remember the prelim. One of the first fights of the night was like a ridiculous featherweight fight or something like that. Um, but I think I think they're going to end up having to switch things around, obviously, right? So yeah, I think we're going to get spoiled with one of these just deluxe cards.
Yeah, and that was the question, was after this is all said and done. So the last Kyle Benner, not talking about April 18th. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, all
definitely.
these guys, yeah, but all these guys, I mean, can you imagine if we're largely stagnant until like June 1st, what those next 6 months are going to look like? You're going to have 35, you're going to be live every weekend, essentially, if not doing 2 shows a week in theory.
Yeah,
And you'd have the whole roster essentially at your disposal. You know,
yeah.
we even got to get the Irish Dragon one more in potentially before the
Oh
end of the
yeah,
year.
yeah. Yeah, the plan was to be well before the end of the year. Now it's more looking like, maybe the very end of the year.
Right. So
So
one more commenter here from Who is Logan? Paul, do you remember acting in the play Extremities?
yeah, yeah, I do.
When
Yeah,
was that?
extremities. Oh my God. I was still in college. I was still at University of the Arts, I think, but I think I was a senior in college. So I mean, 2007, 2008, and I played this crazy like serial killer rapist guy who shows up to this girl's house looking for his buddy, and he's super nice, super charismatic, works his way into the house and asks to use their phone, starts ripping the phone cord out of the wall, locks the door behind him, and then this play is just this insane story of this guy trying to take advantage of this woman, and she ends up spraying him with the bug spray she had out from trying to kill like a wasp in her house. Locks him up in the fireplace, makeshift, puts him, and then her roommates come home, and she's explaining, and she's a hothead of a woman and very feminist, so the whole play is about this guy, me, convinces these roommates that I was just there to use the phone, and she thought I was making a move on her, and she overreacted and flipped out, and now she's trying to cover her own ass. Crazy play. Crazy
I'm
play.
just so excited for the second phase, 2.0 of your acting career. And I don't know what shape or form that's going to be. But I think
Yeah.
unlike a lot of people who we see in these acting, like you're not going in to do like the high octane action role. You got some serious theater
No.
chops. You got a
Yeah.
tremendous gift in that voice, man. I mean, what I would have done for that voice of yours early on in my broadcast career.
Well,
Now my voice is just ruined, damaged.
John, I did a play called Talk Radio. Do you know Eric Bogosian? He
Yep.
wrote it. And Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, he wrote that too. The Talk Radio was made into a movie. It was really popular twice on Broadway. Liev Schreiber played it in the revival of it on Broadway. Perfect voice for a guy who plays a talk radio host. But I played him when I was like 20. Barry Champlain was the name of the guy. Played this crazy, like, very extreme, like Howard Stern meets, some of these political guys that are just in your face, say whatever they want, hanging up on you kind of a guy. Now I'm the exact age of what that guy should be. That's like a role I would go back to. I'd get paid nothing for a theater to pay me to do Barry Champlain
Right.
again right now.
Theater
So,
is,
Bill
is
Raudebush, if you're out there watching this for some reason, the guy who directed that, let's run it back, baby. We could do that so much better now.
Well, theater is really where it's at, right? I mean, for a lot of the actors out there, my twin brother majored in musical theater, right?
Yeah.
That's the closest thing to a fight, is it not? I
Yeah,
mean,
and that's why when I do these comparisons, and we did a lot of it for the lead up to the Hooker fight, was comparing opening night to walking to the octagon, the lights are on, the crowd is there, all these kind of things. That's not film. Now, when I talk about that kind of stuff, I'm comparing it to
right.
the theater, which is, you're backstage, the crowd comes in, they settle, you get ready, lights down, curtain. I mean, you come out, it's on. When it's on, it's on. There's no stopping like there is in film. Film's its own fucking beast.
Oh, right,
It's a
right,
completely different art form.
right,
It's like being, really good at mixed martial arts and somebody's really good at soccer. You're both athletes, but you're just not doing the same thing.
right. So a couple people have written in here that I'm cocaine. I mean, that's like the ultimate compliment, is it not? Somebody writing that John is cocaine. Like in theory, I'm like human speed getting you going today, because that's the fucking goal, right? I
You
mean,
woke me up, John.
so like
Yeah.
you
I lost you there.
You there?
Yeah, I got you back now.
All right, real quick. So I don't know what the fuck's going on. So you wake up every day. I have part of my routine is I text my mom at like 6:45 every day because she's home by herself to make sure that she's alive, you know. But every day is like waking up, and it's Groundhog Day in a lot of respects. If you don't have an FNA live or whatever, like when you wake up, or you like, I'm like every day, I'm like, here we fucking go again. Let's go homeschool our kids and try not to punch ourselves in the face.
It's breakfast. I make Ashling breakfast, and we do some homework stuff throughout the day. I mean, she's still in preschool, so it's not, there's not a huge curriculum, but learning all her sounds and doing some basic math and stuff like that, and trying to get a workout in at some point. I don't even know what it's going to be day to day, but I know the other day I was in my room, in this little bedroom, shadow boxing as hard as I could with my headphones on and doing push-ups in between, because I was like, I have to do something fight related, and I was losing it.
Yeah, I've been trying to work out in some capacity every day. I love how anytime you talk about training, Craig Eckelberg has to chime in and just laugh at whatever the fuck you're saying. You're a great Rufus Sport teammate there. All right, well, we're going to bounce on out of here. I'm gonna leave you.
Craig's fatter than me right now, I bet. I want a scale check today, Craig.
All right, I'm going to leave you with this, and then Feld Exotic will get you a final thought. So I don't know where my twin brother read this or saw the video of this, but I think it's a good idea for anybody that is sort of local, and you might be able to do this for your mom. Have you been able to see your mom, though, every now and again, or not?
Yeah. Well, her house is 5 minutes from me. Okay. We have to keep our distancing. Like, I haven't given my mom a hug in a long time.
Right. So my mom is about 20 minutes from me. She's been by herself for 3 weeks. So 2 days ago, me, my sister, my twin brother, all our kids got in our cars, caravan to my mom's place, parked in her street, 6 feet between cars, called her, told her to come outside. And she came outside, and all her grandkids were there in the driveway. And obviously we kept 10 feet or whatever, but she burst into tears, and it's just hard. So I'm just trying to get creative, even though that wasn't my idea, just get creative with ways that maybe you can, see people. Of course, now technically I'm not even supposed to drive the 20 minutes to see my mom in that capacity, but, we're all in this together. I heard somebody say that in late February when a lot of us were dismissive of the coronavirus. I heard someone say, in a month, you'll see we're all in this together, and we are, man. And thankfully, I got 1 day of Felder a week to get me through.
Thank God, right? You need your fix.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ice my face. I will see you next Thursday at noon, if not sooner. And if it ends up being Florida, you just let me know how I can help, bro. I got a mask for you. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to help.
That's what I need.
Okay.
I'll bring some gloves.
All right.
And some Purell if you got it. Actually, I'm about to get some Purell. I got a secret stash coming in.
All right. Well, we will. We'll try to connect at the same time next week, and hopefully we got a fight to talk about. I think a lot of people would say hopefully we don't, but either way, we're in this together, buddy. And I love you, man. I'll see you in a week. All right.
You too. Yeah. Stay safe, everyone. Stay inside.
All right. Be well, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. This will be repurposed at some point, maybe even on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube page. But if you missed us live, you will be able to watch.